You know, Republicans and Democrats in Washington don't agree on much, but they do agree that biochar can do good things. And there's broad bipartisan support for biochar in Washington, and that makes all the difference in giving us the opportunity to make real progress in Washington, even in today's dysfunctional politics. But we need your help. You know, sometimes we think that just ordinary folks like us can't have any impact on what goes on in Washington. But I have to tell you, on issues like this that are specific, limited issues that affect a limited set of people in a very profound way at the grassroots, that informed and outspoken and engaged citizenry, in fact, is the most effective way to impact public policy. Next slide. Or you're already there. Excuse me. Last slide. So we need your help. And if you could reverse that, that would be, go back to the last slide, or you can't do that? Yes, we can. There we go. If you're willing to help, and by help, I mean be on a list so that if I email you and I say, you know, you're senator, you're a member of Congress, we really need their vote on a critical issue for biochar. If you would send them an email or call their office, it would really make a difference. If you're willing to be that person that I can reach out to, email me. My email address is up on the screen. It's just my last name @gmail.com. That's a way you can make a real difference on policy in Washington affecting biochar. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Next, we have Maureen to talk about US Biochar.
USBC, yeah,
Yep.
Thank you.
There we go.
Wonderful. All right, I'm gonna adjust it for the short person. Thank you guys for being here and sticking with us for after lunch. I feel like we all need a nap, but hopefully this will be a little bit of an invigorating and hopeful presentation. So I'm the executive director of the US Biochar Coalition. We were formed in 2023 with the recognition that we had a lot of work to do. The Farm Bill was being started on, and we quickly gathered a bunch of people that were focused on policy and regulation to grow the biochar industry. And 2024, we started out with our first programming, primarily having biannual fly-ins to Washington, D.C. to do exactly what Chuck was talking about, which is old-fashioned shoe leather lobbying, actually, meeting with members of Congress and their staff, as well as regulators, to try to ensure that we have a better regulatory and legislative framework for biochar. So, bunch of our members, so you can kind of see the breadth. What we're trying to do is grow an entire ecosphere of people supporting biochar. It's everybody from obviously producers to end users and everyone in between, folks that are developing MRV, folks that are developing robotics to sort trash, folks that are financiers, etc. Next slide, please. Great. So this talks a little bit about what we are. We're a trade association. We're completely member-driven and member-financed. Our goal is to unify the voice of the biochar industry across agricultural, forestry, climate tech, and the carbon removal stakeholders. Next slide, please. So, initiatives to build to build congressional support for biochar. That literally is our mission, and we do it every single day at the USBC. Primarily, we do this through our programming. We have fly-ins twice a year. We have fireside chat with our board members, bi-weekly policy calls, including updates on the Congress, administration. We are involved in selected states. Usually right now, California and New York have a tendency to kind of be the leaders in this area, but we're keeping an eye on Minnesota. And we also have things like member alerts on legislation, et cetera. Advocacy is what we're doing. It's our middle name and in our DNA. So congressional initiatives. Chuck did talk about a few of them, but I wanted to throw a light on a few other opportunities here. So there was a really big piece of legislation that was recently passed, otherwise known as the Big Beautiful Bill Act, and it extended a lot of credits which biochar can actually qualify for. One of them that kind of snuck underneath the radar screen, and our board chair, May O'Ryan, always talks about this, is the New Market Investment Tax Credit. This was made permanent in the BBBA, and this can really, really help people that are looking to develop in under-resourced areas. It helps you get financing, and it's a vehicle that every biochar project should be looking at. In addition, 45Q survived the bloodbath. It's not just that, you know, it is not incentivizing biochar projects right now. We are working on that, but it is at least still here. So that is something that is, you know, valuable. We also still have the Clean Electricity Production Tax Credit, as well as the Clean Fuel Production Tax Credit and the Clean Electricity ITC. All of those survive for biochar. There were other renewable technologies that were phased out, mostly solar and wind, but gratefully, biomass-derived credit survived. And as Chuck said, you know, both Democrats and Republicans realize we do a really good job in the United States of making waste and not using it for its best value. And I think they're starting to understand that we're leaving opportunities on their table with that. We also have a number of proposed pieces of legislation. So the USBC, along with a number of other technologies within the carbon dioxide removal space that are not currently reflected in 45Q, are actually working on a piece of legislation that would propose a tech-neutral standpoint for 45Q. Stop talking about the technologies that you want to be removing carbon dioxide and just say what you want it to do and let us all compete. That's what we're doing in the Clean Fuels Tax Credit and the Clean Electricity Tax Credit. Those are both neutral tax credits. That's what we're trying to do with 45Q. The Farm Bill still needs to be reauthorized, and that's where the impetus for NRCS codes comes from. So we're trying to get that over the finish line as well. There's other pieces of legislation that have been proposed. The biggest one I think that has some legs is the Fix Our Forest Act, which has already passed the House and is being worked on in the Senate. And this has a lot of focus on using biochar as a way to better manage our forestry resources. It was actually drafted by a forester in the Congress, and I think has a good chance of passing. Next slide, please. We also see a number of opportunities to help biochar in regulation. We do actually have current petition into Treasury to see if guidance would work on 45Q rather than passing new legislation. We're trying to work with EPA to carve out a biogenic feedstock exception for pyrolysis, which would mean that it's not just clean, woody biomass, but it's also things like manure and biosolids that would qualify for that. We're working with NRCS to try to expand the practice codes that biochar qualifies for. Right now, it's only the 336 practice code. We're now looking at the nutrient management practice code, 590, and then obviously future opportunities related to any type of forest management. The states, unsurprisingly, are stepping in a lot of ways to take up the mantle where the federal government has kind of laid down the baton. California has seen a lot of action this past year. They actually just passed the carbon dioxide removal purchase program. This is huge. This is actually going to be allocating at least $50 million towards actual purchase of the CDR materials. Google and other private companies are looking to match. We have a number of other pieces of legislation that are making their way through or that will be picked up. And then last but not least, Gavin Newsom and the legislature extended cap and trade through 2045. So that is a big program for California. New York's not going to be left out of this. Next week at Climate Week, you guys will probably hear some announcements about two separate bills that are going to be coming down the pike for biochar, one on carbon tax credits and one on biochar. Next Next slide, please. And last but not least, let's not forget about collaboration. You know, this is a great example. There are a number of entities that are involved in biochar, and if we're all lifting each other up and pushing forth on various different pieces of legislation and policy, it will be really, really helpful. We're hopeful to ramp up to a COP31 participation in South Australia in 2027. And last but definitely not least, the USBC is working on, we've already drafted and hopefully will be soon more broadly sharing it, production standards for industrial scale biochar. We hope to be able to knit them together with the USBI's standard for testing, and then ultimately, hopefully, evolving into some type of end use standard so that our end users can know exactly what biochar can be used for, you know, the calculations, et cetera. So that's it for me. You guys are more than welcome. We would love for you to follow us. Please find us on LinkedIn at the US Biochar Coalition. And if anybody has any questions about joining, my colleagues' email address is here. We'd love to hear from you. We're building this as we speak, running down the runway as we're building the airplane, and the more the merrier. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Thank you, Maureen. That's some awesome words. Great to hear from Chuck and yourself so far. And not to be last but least here, but we have Mike Werner. Last and least, last and most, yeah, there we go, from Qualterra.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Werner. Before I get started, I want to say thank you to the USBI and Tina and Miles. So much work has been done to get us all here. So let's give them a real round of applause. Nice job. Next slide. So real quickly, what is Qualterra? Qualterra essentially means quality earth. I apologize, got to adjust the mic. Can I move the?
You can stand on that.
You need me to, I'm going to move this, sorry guys. I didn't need the bench there. So Qualterra. Qualterra means quality earth. And real quickly for background, our company is focused on integrating a set of technologies. A set of technologies that are predicated on our patented biomass processing systems that create novel biochar amendments that we are focused on scientifically proving to improve crop health, horticulture crops specifically. And the other part of our business is we own large greenhouse operations, about a 10-acre greenhouse in Washington State where we can produce about 10 million to 15 million plants a year. And what we're doing right now, we just bought this greenhouse this last year. We've produced about 4 million plants this year, and we're incorporating biochar. So vertically integrating these systems of plant propagation through tissue culture and greenhouse, but we're adding biochar into every plant we sell. That is our mission. So if you're an orchardist, or if you're buying, grape rootstocks, apple rootstocks, hops, hemp, coniferous, even roses, we're incorporating biochar at very specified amounts into our soil system. So when our customers, they purchase a plant or they purchase 1 million plants from us, they have the ability to inform their brand that they're part of basically the carbon economy. And when they sell those fruits or those vegetables to their customers, they can position that brand as a carbon responsible or a climate friendly apple. We've all been in the produce section of our respective stores, and we see all of these plants and apples and cherries and grapes and such, but a carbon friendly product. It helps position, it helps change the mentality of how people consume products. Next slide, please. So our goal has really tried to build trust through science, and we've been incorporating biochar and running our biomass processing solutions for over a decade now. But before we built this biochar study program, which Dr. Cheryl Marsek has been running for us and doing a great job, we had a chance to meet some people, and we invited a group of individuals out to visit us in Spokane, Washington, at our Biochar Innovation Summit meeting a few years ago. Chuck Hassebrook was one of the people who came out and joined us, but we were joined by growers, financial institutions, political lobbyists, and politicians. And we were trying to figure out what does the market need from a company like us? What we're trying to do is a lot of listening. And I think listening right now at where we are is going to be very important for us to move the message of biochar forward. While we are trying to convey a message, I think right now in the way the world is changing, is that we might not think about what we want to say, but maybe think about what we want to ask. So, next slide, please. So when we've been working at Qualterra, we've been spending time not only in Washington State, working on industrial symbiosis programs and learning about what the state needs from us, but also trying to project that message. And over the course of time, we've had a chance to also work with the US Biochar Coalition, Chuck Hassebrook, and if you haven't met these people, you should. They are amazing people to work with and great partners. So this slide, so why are we showing two archaeologists in a pit looking at soil stratigraphy in 1969? Anybody knows what soil stratigraphy is? It's basically, our soils are basically a calendar, right? As you get deeper and you get into deeper layers, you sit there and you go, well, that's means things are older, right? And so it's important to note that a lot of my passion for what I'm doing right now comes from the gentleman in the white shorts and the really too short shorts. That's my grandfather. His name's Richard Doherty. And he was an archaeologist who focused on preserving history, preserving the knowledge of history. He worked on some of the most important finds in not only in Washington State, but also worked at some of the highest levels of government in his experience. Preservation of the past. And so when I sit here and I look around this room, I look around this meeting, I look around our industry, I think that we're here to preserve the future. That's our job. Next slide, please. One more. There you go, that one. Because the technologies that we are all delivering, the technologies that we are focused on, the information that we have in front of us, when our grandchildren look at photos of us, what have we done to preserve the future? The future of our industries, the future of our climate. And so, next slide, please. So in closing, what I'd ask this is, as we think about our messaging, as we think about our direction, as we think about the things that we may ask Chuck and Maureen and others to talk about, let's look for the things that are common about us all. Let's look at the things that we are all connected to together in order to, one, advance what we all know is amazing science, an amazing opportunity in biochar, but also lift up our industry by bringing solutions, bringing results, and most importantly, bringing them together. Thank you.
I love going after Mike because he's so tall. I had to adjust the thing. I thought either that or after you get the stand on the box. But I want to thank our panelists for their information so far. And at this time, we would like to open the floor up for questions regarding this and regarding policy. So does anyone want to start off?
Don't all rush at once. There we go.
Yes, sir. Right here. Oh, thank you. Yeah, we heard something rustling there. Oh, that can work. Or we got a guy behind you that's going to try as well. While you're doing that, we can try to spot. Go ahead and try your outdoor voice here. We'll see.
I'm half deaf. I went to a lot of like rock shows. Come a little bit forward so I can hear you.
I see a confrontation coming.
No, 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 no.
Just
Jump on the
teasing.
stage. There we go. That way other people can hear you too.
Oh, yeah, okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah, is that better? Okay. Question for you really with respect to 45Q, and obviously 45Q is targeted toward carbon capture and storage and sequestration, geologic storage and sequestration. So are you trying to expand 45Q to include soil carbon sequestration via biochar and other means? Is that the focus? And how far along are you in that process, I guess?
Thank you so much for the question. So it's not actually only carbon capture and sequestration. 45Q also allows for beneficial reuse. They pay for beneficial reuse of the captured carbon. It was started by oil and gas companies like a decade ago, and they wanted to be able to take the captured carbon and inject it into the ground for enhanced oil recovery. So that's how it started, and it's changed over the years. DAC was added during the first Trump administration, and under the IRA, they scaled the credit. You would get a lesser credit if you were beneficially reusing the carbon as opposed to capturing it. But biochar, Chuck said it, and it's an absolute case. The way the law is written, we think that biochar should actually currently qualify, but we've not ever been able to see a project actually get that credit. So if you put in for it, you're not qualifying for it. So we're taking kind of a two-pronged approach to it. We're going back to, we have a new Treasury Department. They may be more open to issuing guidance, and guidance would be much quicker than having to pass legislation. So we're taking that avenue. And then the second avenue that we're taking is we have legislation that's already crafted. It's being currently shopped by a larger group of carbon capture technologies, not just biochar. And we have draft legislation, and we have 2 targets of opportunity in both the House and the Senate. We are finalizing those folks that will hopefully sponsor the legislation, and the idea would be able to introduce it and get other people on board, primarily from the Senate Finance Committee and the House Ways and Means Committee, as well as anybody else that's interested. But Senate Finance and Ways and Means have jurisdiction over this legislation. So that's where we are. We're not starting from full cloth. We've got a coalition. We're pushing things forward, but we've got a way to go before getting it over the hump, so to speak. And on top of that, there was just huge tax bill that was just recently passed, right? The BBBA, and so there's not a lot of appetite. People aren't like banging down the doors for another piece of tax legislation, but there are always opportunities in end of year's package to try to do something in tax. Does that answer your question? Cool.
Thank you, Maureen. Oh, you can keep it.
Keep it.
All right, we have any additional questions here? She's getting her 10,000 steps in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's so cool to see all the stuff you're doing, in particular at the national level. Could you walk us through, for those of us who might be trying to do something at a state level, especially legislation, what does the type of support, how would that work? How might you support state level initiatives?
Who are you asking?
Any
Anybody?
of you?
All right. Well, we're gonna give it a
All right. Hi. I'll do my best here. I think that our experience in the state of Washington, as we were developing some technologies, we actually had an ask, okay? We had an ask for, what are you guys working on? And I think that one of the things that we have to do as an industry is engage quickly with information. So they were looking for, and this is a few years ago, and I'll share a story. They were looking for some information about biomass processing, combining other waste streams for agriculture. And what Washington State's governor at the time, Jansley, his second most important thing was climate and his whole agenda. And so we got an ask, hey, you know, what are you guys working on? And so kind of put together a discussion, real quick call with him saying, these are the things we're working on. And so we kind of went into high engage mode in Washington State. And what came out of that was discussions around the Industrial Symbiosis Program. And it was a program where they're taking waste streams in Washington State and basically funding them. And I think one of the things that we should think about as an industry at the state level, and I was talking with a gentleman this morning about it, is go to our state departments of commerce, departments of agriculture, like the gentleman who was up before us, go knock on doors there. Because I do think that there's things that states are wanting to do, they may not know how to do them. And it might take us to teach them how to do that. And we're probably gonna learn some things along the way. I know when we were working with them, it was the Department of Commerce and 2 members from the governor's office. We told them to come see us. And I think that's one of the most important takeaways I've kind of had as a, running a business, have them come visit. Now, little did they know when they came and visit, I was gonna rent a minivan and we were gonna spend 16 hours driving around eastern Washington State on a hot day. But what came from that was this idea around looking for companies like Qualterra and like our partner company, IEP, and others, and they built an entire funding mechanism called the Industrial Symbiosis Program. Qualterra was awarded 2 grants, 2 successive years, to advance the science of biochar, as well as renewable energy capture. But there were a whole host of other companies in our sector that were awarded grants as well. And each year, as they saw the improvement and measure that improvement, they added more to the budget. So one of the things at the state levels, I would really investigate what's happening in your commerce departments, your departments of agriculture, energy, and your governor's office. Find out what their priorities are, because I believe there's so many things that biochar can do to align with the priorities at the state level. And I actually think strategically, right now, if we can get more momentum at the state level, it will supply Chuck and Maureen the opportunity to really take more information, take more fact back to the leaders, and it will be harder for them to say no, because their constituents are using biochar in meaningful ways. It's measurable, but it's a groundswell. It's not just one state, it's not just 2 states, it's all states. And so that's where I think, from a state standpoint, in the time we're in right now, I think a state-by-state strategy is really smart, and then rolling that up into a federal strategy. Hopefully that answers your question, but if you get engagement or can find engagement, hyper-engage, because most likely they're looking for information from you.
Don't forget about the state legislators, though. Like, they can be so important.
Absolutely.
I mean, one other thing I would say that can be really helpful in state policy is that in state policy, once you get a state that kind of steps out in the lead and passes innovative legislation, a lot of other states will copy it. And so I think that's one of the things we can look to as an industry is if we need examples, we need states to get out there and be first, but once they do, we can start sharing those with other states, and oftentimes they will get picked up and passed across the country then.
No, thank you. Those are some great insights on that question. Any other questions here?
Jim, can I add something to?
Oh, yes. No, for sure, Maureen.
So the last thing I was going to suggest is that state legislatures work their tails off to get elected. They're all out there. They're hungry. They want to carve out a spot for themselves. Many times you can actually help develop a state legislator into a champion for biochar. I'm going to use California as an example. State Senator Caballero has just turned into this powerhouse of supporting biochar. She's sticking it into places that we just didn't even expect it to be, because she knows the power of the technology. So ensuring that you're, tending your garden in your state legislature and in your house and the assembly and the Senate is really, really valuable, because if you are developing champions of biochar in that space, they're the ones who are passing the laws that the government, the governor and his cabinet or her cabinet will then act upon. So, it can all start with your own member of the assembly or the Senate starting to develop those relationships.
Great thoughts. Next question, please. Don't be shy, or I'll pick somebody out. All right, just to get things going, keep things going along here, can you tell the three panelists, go to all of you, what are some of the keys to effectively communicating with policy makers about biochar?
I'm sorry.
Okay, repeat again. What are the keys to communicating effectively with policymakers about biochar?
One thing I would say is it's really important to know your audience and know what they're interested in. And so oftentimes, I mentioned before that biochar is really unique in the bipartisan support it draws. It doesn't mean they support it for the same reasons. Maybe Democrats support it for climate, maybe Republicans support it for other reasons, because they see it as helpful with their forests or their farms and things like that. So know your audience and meet people where they're at. So generally that means knowing what to stress. And if you're talking to a congressman who's really concerned about climate, then by all means use climate as a hook to talk to him. But if you're talking to a congressman who's not, talk to him about the benefits for their farms and their forests and their rural communities where it can create jobs. I found that to be really key with biochar, because this is an issue where you can get support across the aisle, and that just makes all the difference in the world in getting stuff done. But, it takes a little bit different message between the two parties.
Oh, great point. Anyone else want to step up to that one?
I would say it's even broader than that, right? Like you have to make it salient for that member. Why would they care? Make it as personal as possible, and also give them wins, right? As I said earlier, they're hungry. There's a reason being elected in public office is not for the faint of heart. It is a brutal blood sport, and so giving them an opportunity to shine, giving them that win, whether it is a legislator or it's a new administration, that goes a long way to being able to build trust and camaraderie, and hopefully get your project over the finish line.
No, that's a great thought, Mike.
Yeah, could I just share one thing? I'm going to relay a story that happened to Chuck and I. It's about message. Earlier this spring, Chuck and I were in D.C. together, spending time in a senator's office, and working with one of the aides, who's fantastic, I've met with multiple times. But we started talking about sustainability. And this aide became visibly shaken. And I'll go back to what Chuck said. You kind of have to meet people where they're at. And so Chuck and I kind of took a step back and said, okay, we're not here to really talk about biochar. We're here to find out, how are you doing, right? And I think, like Maureen said, I don't like the term blood sport. I don't think that's a good term, but I do think it's hard right now, right? And there's certain vernacular that we want to use but may not be able to use in our industry. And I think that, as we think about the maturation of our industry, and I think about the conversation we had in that senator's office that day, is help them solve how they're going to communicate this. Not to say that we're trying to shape demand, but shape understanding in a way that they can convey it. And so sometimes we have to help change our message, change how we're conveying it, so it aligns not so much with a construct, but maybe aligns with a greater principle or a greater purpose that they would want to be a part of. But it was a surprising moment for me to just learn there's certain vernacular that's acceptable and there's certain that's not. And we saw it in our nation's capital. And so as we go out and we project our message, I think we really need to be hyper-focused on making sure that message resonates with the most amount of people, with the most amount of fact, and the most amount of support. So, thanks.
Oh, thanks, Mike. We got an additional comment for Chuck.
Speaking about my visits with Mike, one of the most effective visits I saw was when Mike met with his representative in Congress and talked about the new facility he was building in his district. And I have to tell you, that's a language that both parties understand. And, you know, we've worked with a biochar producer in Iowa who has literally, honestly, had exactly half of the Iowa congressional delegation out to see it. And every one of those members of Congress, a senator and 2 representatives, became strong advocates of biochar. And so, you know, if you're building a new facility in somebody's district, that is, show it to them. That will make all the difference in the world.
Well, great, Maureen. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Just thought someone was going to come up. Any questions out here? Do we have one? Right here? Okay. Oh, someone is. Well, yeah, there we go.
She's close, but we're deaf.
So related to communicating the benefits of biochar, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you're hearing from either lawmakers or constituents that you're interacting with?
I'll take a shot at that, and then I'll hand off the mic. You know, early on, one of the things I heard, there was some talk that biochar in soil was not long-lasting. And so that was one misconception that we had to address. And I think we've gotten by that. Another one I ran into was that people were concerned that, you know, early on, biochar came across as almost a religious point, that that we weren't talking about the science enough. And I think members really want to know that what we're doing makes science, you know, has solid science behind it, and biochar does. And so we just need to make sure that we're communicating that, because biochar, it works. It does a lot of really good things, and we just need to make that case and make sure they understand that, and it's not just us talking.
So one of the things that I've run across in both biochar as well as my former life in biogas is that there's, I think, a lot of misunderstanding on the politics of the left, in particular environmental justice groups, as to exactly what biochar is. And there's a lot of, I think, kind of initial reactions that aren't well formed, that want to fight against anything that is considered biomass, quote, you know, burning, which biochar is not. So it's, I think there's, you know, there's education that's needed on, you know, on all sides. There's education that's needed to those groups so they can understand that, you know, this is actually quite beneficial to be managing biogenic feedstocks. And I think that there's, you know, education many times that's needed on more right-leaning folks, that, you know, it is about managing our forest better. It is about providing jobs. It is about building US-based resources and energy, fuels, and biocarbon and stability, et cetera. So it's, ironically, we've fought a lot with the environmental justice groups, just kind of nipping at our heels, and I think a lot more work probably needs to be done there as well.
No, that's great, Maureen. We ran into the same issue with the naughty word combustion, coming into the conversation a lot, and a lot of the education regarding the difference between combustion and pyrolysis. Any other questions out there? It was a great question. Over here? Okay.
Yeah, I would just want to take a second to say I appreciate all your work. I think it's been great to have a real biochar policy presence, both at state levels and federal levels. And one question I had was, you know, how is biochar policy work that you all are doing, how is it interacting with, you know, Carbon Business Council? Like, the larger kind of carbon markets representation of all the different pathways, and similarly, like how, like if you could talk about how you see that interacting with, you know, really big lobbies like oil and gas or other industries, and like are there tensions there? Is there collaboration? Like what does that kind of look like? It's a kind of broad question, but feel free to take it however.
Directing it to one of us? Or?
No, yeah, all of you.
Oh, sure. All right, I'll take a stab. So it's always interesting to be playing in ponds where other people have established like a tax credit, like the 45Q. As long as we're not taking away from their ability to function and taking some food off their plate, I don't think they look at us as like a competitive entity. And as a matter of fact, there could be ways that we're actually working with the oil and gas companies to help remediate, brownfield sites or development areas. So there's a way to kind of like mesh it in. We work with other entities within Washington, D.C., and the Carbon Business Council is actually one of them. We do a monthly call with them on everything that's kind of going on in like the CDR world, and we all work at different levels. So we're coordinated loosely, but I use that word loosely. So
I will add that groups like the Carbon Business Council have been certainly supportive. We reach out to them when we work, for example, on the Biochar Research Network Act. We've done a number of sign-on letters. We reached out to Carbon Business Council and other groups like that, businesses, and got them involved, and it's always been a good working relationship.
Mike, do you want anything? No, I think we got it. All right, we're good. Great question. Any other questions here? Never failed. The great, we got Dwayne here from MnDOT. We got a microphone behind you, Dwayne.
one behind you.
I'm confused. But I'm confused about a lot of things. I don't even know what we're trying to solve. And I would recommend, is there anyone talking about, in my world, a DOT, I deal with engineers. And whatever we use, it has to solve a problem. But I don't think we've identified the problems that biochar could solve. So I've got people that want to sell it. I understand the fuel, I understand fertilizer, but is anyone working on asking engineers to be part of this decision system to actually use biochar or any other product to solve a problem? Solve stormwater volume reduction. We can't use a lot of words, I appreciate that, but I still have to deal with something with resilience so that the roads don't fail, get eroded. But part of that is, I can only live today. There is no tomorrow. It's all about funding today and spending it. So some of the things we're doing actually save money, but not today. Is there anyone talking about how to use systems, whether it's biochar or other things, that save money tomorrow by spending today? So it's solving a problem, but is anyone talking about spending money, the right amount of money, which might be more than doing nothing, so that I save money in the future? And an example would be, again, I apologize for the word, but it's climate resiliency. When storms are bigger, droughts are bigger, things are weirder, but it's affecting our transportation system. So I hear a lot today about farming, but I don't know that you've talked about railroads, gas industries that have to perpetuate lines, or even the DOTs.
Well, I think that's fair. I mean, we certainly talk about problems in agriculture. The biochar can help solve problems of drought stress, getting more of your rain and heavy downpours. All those things need for more efficient use of nitrogen fertilizer, need to reduce emissions. But our focus has been on agriculture.
Yeah. So the USBC, and great question, right? Because we are talking a lot here about agriculture. The USBC is writ large, right? We're not just talking about agriculture, but we are talking about saving money in agriculture too, right? So if you're using biochar in your soils, hopefully what you're not just doing is seeing increased carbon content, but you're also seeing nitrogen fixing. Hopefully you'll be able to save on your fertilizer, save on irrigation, et cetera. It is a bet on the future. But USBC is very focused on what I would consider decarbonization of heavy industries as well, whether it's being utilized in Portland cement or in steel making. We've also seen it research that it's an ability to be able to use it as a graphite replacement in batteries, et cetera. So there's a lot of applications for biochar far beyond the agricultural. It is moving into a much more broad industrial category as a commodity, and it all depends upon what feedstocks you're using, what your process to actually make the biochar is, and to get your ultimate product. But there's a lot of future programming for biochar to come, and it all is about decarbonization and ultimately, hopefully, saving your producers money in the process.
This is a tough one, right? I think our industry is going through great change and great growth. But I also believe, and I think about it from the context of Qualterra, is that I'm always trying to think about how I project our voice. And I think that the voice, across the industry, I think we, all of us, still haven't found that voice that connects us all. And while there are so many different important pieces of work that are being done, I don't think that we have the connectivity yet and the continuity yet in our message. And I think that falls on all of us. That's not anybody's responsibility. I think it's on all of us to think about how we're connecting, how we're engaging, how we're measuring and solving and providing those results. And I can honestly say I can't keep up with all of the great work that's being done. I did my homework before I came up here. But to your question specifically, I do think it comes down to message, not how we're positioning, but just that we're aware. It's multifaceted. And I think that's one of the things that we need to think about as an industry is how do we take what's going on and make sure we all see it together. We all understand what's going on. It's hard to keep up with, but I'm pretty sure that I don't know all of the great benefits of biochar. But I think as an industry, we probably have a responsibility to really get connected on that if we want our industry to grow. That's a personal opinion, but I think there's so much great potential and great work being done. I just don't know that we're projecting it the way that we need to yet, but I think we're getting closer. I don't think that answers your question, but I think it's something we need to work on.
No, just as a side, this is, if you don't know, Dwayne Stenley, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, has been a big advocate on, or I should say practical person, working on biochar in transportation corridors. And one observation, just as I'm working in this similar world, a lot of what we're talking today and hearing about is the rural applications in agriculture and such like that. And that is different application than the urban or infrastructure applications that we've talked about in our groups. We have done it, and it's just today, right now, we are hearing on the big stage of that. But Dwayne, I hear you what you're saying, and we're working through the same situation with the city of Minneapolis, Lincoln and Cleveland or Cincinnati are looking at the same thing. So we're up here, it's just a matter of getting more time involved with those type of issues to get ahead of them, because that's one of the key frontiers we see emerging in urban applications.